The history of the church. Now, after the death of the apostles and the generation after that was taught directly by the apostles, who was there to fight heresy? Who was there that knew the gospel that God has chosen to teach the truth? Because during the apostles and the generation after the apostles, there were many groups that rose up and to popularity that had all kinds of weird beliefs, any number of them, that were fought by the apostles. And the circumcision group was more convincing, and they were fought by the apostles. But who was there to fight them when they're gone? Who did God choose to take on the mantle of leadership? Now, I'm not talking about who took on leadership, because we know by looking at the church fathers in history who took on leadership. But after the generation of the apostles was a generally faithful generation of leaders. And then they all died, and they were replaced by people the churches that were already mainly filled with Gentiles chose. And nothing wrong with Gentile Christians. Hey, I am one. But neither of these men were chosen by God to take on a position that they took on. And we see the generation after the generation of the apostles, we see many of them were the ones that formulated the many heretical teachings that soon, within a couple hundred years, became the Catholic Church. The beliefs that founded the Catholic Church started in the generation after the generation of the apostles. Sorry, that's kind of confusing. But that's when it started. That's when these beliefs started. The belief of the Eucharist or the communion being the actual blood and flesh of Jesus Christ, which is a violation of the law of Moses against drinking blood, which is carried on in the New Testament, which I address in another video. That, isn't it obvious that it's sinful if you cannot drink blood and not be condemned? How can you be drinking the blood of Jesus? And so these type of doctrines started coming up and becoming very popular. And most of the Christian world believed these things. And there were divisions on various doctrines. There were worse doctrines out there, like the Arians. They're horrible. What's that word? Something along the lines of modology or something like that, or there's many other ones that was popular, but not as popular as Roman Christianity. And Roman Christianity is obviously wrong to many people that even consider the Bible important in any way, shape, or form. Clearly, it's wrong. Anyone can open a Bible and then ask the question, where is almost this whole religious doctrine in this book? It's not there. You just can't do it. It's in traditions of men. And this generation took over for a long time. Even though that generation died, they were replaced with another and another and another. Their beliefs stayed for a long time and became even worse and worse and worse until the Reformation. Then what we have in the Reformation is people realizing, well, it's not based on the Bible. So we're going to read the Bible and base it more on the Bible. But look at the type of denominations that came out from the Reformation. Were they truth? Did God choose any of them? Did God give them the commission to do it? No. They saw corruption in the Catholic Church, and they're right. There's corruption in the Catholic Church. They wanted to do things the way God wanted them to be done, and from their hearts, that's a good motivation. But what did they do? Well, we have Calvinism, which is a horrible heresy that warps the gospel into something that has nothing to do with free will at all. Basing their whole belief system on half of a sentence in Romans 8. This is, those who God foreknew also he predestined, where they stop right there, instead of reading that to be conformed to the image of his Son, which answers what they're predestined to. It has nothing to do with salvation at all. And then you have all of the other ones, the Lutherans, the other ones. You can go on and on and on about Protestant denominations in Europe and in America, and not one of them have the gospel. They have a version of the gospel that's not warped to the point of condemning them. Well, at least not all of them. Calvinists changed the gospel. They have another gospel entirely, not even a saving one. But there's a lot of Protestant denominations that don't warp the gospel to the point where they can't be saved, and they give themselves to Christ, and that's good, because God is merciful. He's not going to throw someone in hell because they don't know every single thing. God's merciful. And that's good. But still, even though God's merciful and many of these people are in heaven, what they taught, was it Christian? Was it biblical? No. And it's like, here we are in these modern times, less than almost 2,000 years later. And has God chosen any of these leaders throughout all of church history, other than the apostles, to lead, to teach, to do anything? Did God choose them? Did God send them out? Did God empower them and anoint them for these positions? No. These are just people. And their hearts may have been good. Many of them had the right motivations. But God didn't choose them. And here we are, with all of the world's versions of Christianity, the 30,000 plus versions of Jesus Christ that we see out there, that confuses everybody because no one knows what to believe. And where did it come from? It didn't come from God. All these denominations didn't come from Jesus Christ. I mean, Jesus wasn't denominational, Neither were the apostles. There was not denominations among the apostles. There was either the church or heretics. Really all there was heretics that were warped, and then there was those who were in the truth. The whole concept of denominations didn't come about until long after the apostles and that generation after died. And then there was all these heresies rising up left and right. That's when denominations came about. So which one's true? Well, unfortunately, none of them are true. None of them are right. None of them are true. And we see the evidence of this in the fact that many of these denominations are falling away into heresy. Many of them are falling away into blasphemous heresies. All of them. And over the next few years, you're going to see it getting worse. I guarantee it. And the day will come where you will see the mark of the beast being advertised and pushed by Christian pastors in America. Well, at least in America, that's one thing I was shown, is that religious Christian leaders, most of them, the mark of the beast will be pushed and promoted by most American churches. You may not believe me, but you'll see it. But that's where we are in the world today. Is we're in a world where God hasn't chosen anybody in our past to lead. And don't get me wrong, people will be chosen. God will choose men to lead, to preach, to teach, and they will have the gospel. They will have the truth. And I guarantee when these handful of men come about preaching and teaching, and they're displaying the power of God in ways it hasn't been seen in over 2,000 years, in ways it hasn't been seen at all, ever, you're going to be surprised. And most people that claim to be Christians will reject the gospel.